Hi everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us for our fifth Urban AI conversation. My name is Hubert and I'm the founder of Urban AI. So what is Urban AI? It's a think tank that federates a global community of pioneers in the emerging field of urban artificial intelligence. Together, we are investigating this concept and we propose ethical modes of governance and sustainable uses of Urban AI. But Urban AI is also a space for exchange, debate, and meeting, and this is why we organize the Urban AI conversation, during which contributors and advisors from our community can present you their latest research, projects, or contributions. And today we have the great pleasure to have with us Maarten Sukel, who is AI lead at the City of Amsterdam and also actually PhD student at the University of Amsterdam. And with him, we'll try to understand if Amsterdam is the most AI-ready city in the world, or at least how they are using artificial intelligence. So, as usual, we will have 20 minutes, between 20 and 25 minutes of presentation from Maarten, and then we will have a 20-minute Q&A session with all of you. So if you have questions in mind during the presentation, please, you can use the chat to ask it, or you can also ask at the end of Maarten's presentation. Maarten, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, even being like mentioned as a question if we are the most AI ready city is already nice to hear. So thank you for that. So today I will discuss a bit about all the urban AI projects we're doing in Amsterdam. Myself, as you said, I'm working for the City of Amsterdam as an AI lead. Actually, since a few years, we have been decided that AI is like a technology that's going to be very influential to society. We want to make sure that that's a positive effect on the citizens of Amsterdam. We also truly believe in the collaboration between cities on this point. So myself, I have a technical background and I'm really passionate about making a difference with AI for the city. So today I will briefly introduce something we call Amsterdam Intelligence and what we mean with that. I will go over the AI agenda we have as a city. So what are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? Briefly, I'm going into like, how does AI work? It's like a short intro I like to give to say like, hey, this is the type of AI we think is like useful right now. And afterwards, that's most of the presentation. I will be telling about all the urban AI projects that we have been doing in Amsterdam. So that's the biggest part of it. I really like going into examples, what's working, what's not working, and go through it like that. And please feel free to ask questions in the chat while we do it, or we can talk afterwards. So I'd like to start with a quote from our deputy mayor actually about why we're working on AI. And I think what's really nice about this is that we're considering AI as something that's going to be very useful for the city to achieve our goals, to become more sustainable, to become more equal, things like that, and overall make life more pleasant in the city. But at the same time, we also want to be aware of the risk that this technology will have. There's also a lot of negative things that can be useful. So we want to basically prevent that and make the positive things do happen. So that's why I really like the quote as well. So basically my day-to-day work is using state-of-the-art AI research and then use that to increase the livability of the city. I do this together with a team now. We have approximately, well, I'd say right now 20 people working for the city doing AI research. And every year we collaborate a lot with academic partners. So for example, we have about 25 master students in data science and AI doing research with us, doing all sorts of small POCs and research to actually explore what is possible. And that works really well. We also collaborate with a lot of different institutions, such as local universities, different cities in the Netherlands, but also, for example, AMS Institute in Amsterdam and collaborations like Amsterdam Data Science. And we also have like labs together with the university where like groups of PhDs are doing research into responsible and ethical AI for citizens for civil cases. So the Amsterdam AI agenda, I already briefly mentioned it, is something our city government agreed upon, like, hey, AI is something that's going to be very useful. And I think it's very nice we have this as a city, to have a plan, like, hey, where are we going to, what are we working towards? And one of the biggest things is Amsterdam wants to make AI for the people. So we want to use it in a way that it's actually helping people, bringing people together. We want to also stimulate AI in Amsterdam. Of course, there's huge economical potential. And also, I think Amsterdam is a nice hub where always everybody with different backgrounds was welcome. And we want to continue with that with AI and stimulate the AI ecosystem in Amsterdam even more. Digital rights is a huge part of it. So making sure that algorithms are actually not creating bigger differences within society, but are helping with increasing equality, and also making sure everybody's protected from the technology in a negative sense. And another key point is that we also want to make the conditions in which, for example, urban AI is possible to develop by making the data sets that we use to create algorithms, for example, completely available, and being, well, also being transparent about the things that we do. So transparency is also very key to everything that you do, so that will also come back in the story. So when talking about AIs, of course, it's a bit of a buzzword. So there's a lot of different aspects to it. So you can see a bunch of them here. I normally ask the audience like different ones out of this, like, hey, do you know what it means? Some of them are in Dutch, so maybe I can ask them, because it's funny to see how well you're in Dutch. But overall, there's a lot of it. And this is like an example. So basically, what used to be a 2D image, you can now, with pose estimation, extract somebody's skeletons from it. So you can enhance the information from data you already have, which is, I think, is something from the project we've been doing, is something obviously very useful. So turning in the data into information you can actually use. And this is a project we did last year during the COVID peak we had in December. As at that point, we wanted, for example, to communicate more about social distancing. So we did like a small project, which was very interesting also to get reactions from people about, well, using AI as a computer vision technology like this in public. Basically, it was a camera mounted to this small truck, and it would show on the screen if you were keeping enough distance. And we just go around the city like this to make people aware of social distancing. It was completely an edge device, so it's a pretty small project, nice to work on. But it was quite interesting reactions we got from the, well, people on the streets. And it was just a new way of sending the message, which is now again relevant, like please keep proper distance from each other. I also tend to like experiment with new techniques. So this is me as Tom Cruise, which we made because we think deepfakes, for example, are a technology within AI that can be very dangerous to society, that we really have to spread awareness of. So we like to just experiment with this and then inform people about it and try to see how easy it is, monitor that. Because I think a year ago, you would need a team of people to do something like this. Well, a few months ago, probably you can do it in a day if you know what you're doing. And I think in a year, everybody with a TikTok on their phone or whatever will be able to make deepfakes of almost anything. So that's really going to be influencing our citizens. So we want to make sure that we understand this technology and that we can advise people on this. So how does it all work? I always like, I'm showing pictures of garbage and things like this. So for this example, I'm going into trees. So with functional programming, you would describe a tree where you would want to detect what it is by seeing like it has green leaves and a tree, brown trunk. Of course, that doesn't work with different types of trees. Of course, with urban AI audience, probably you know this, but when we're talking about machine learning, which is one of the biggest drivers, I think, of a lot of the innovations we've been doing with AI, basically what you do is instead of describing a tree, you're giving examples to the machine. And like that, you're trying to actually learn what is a tree. And that's very important information, like a different way of working and also a different way of making this technology that has an influence on how on society. I will later show this also with an example with service requests. Also, often we're talking about AI as like one thing. Here you see within the field of computer vision, there's already so many tasks you can do on an image. So you can do image classification, seeing what's on the image, segmentation, where for every pixel you're seeing it, doing the object detection, where you need less data to train, but you then can still see, for example, the location of things. You can do counting. I will show some things we've been doing with crowd counting in Amsterdam, which have been proven quite useful. And for example, facial recognition. Often when mentioning, hey, we're doing AI projects, that's what people will think about. We actually, as Amsterdam, we said we don't want to do anything with facial recognition, especially not on the streets of the city, because everybody should be able to feel free when roaming around the city. So that's actually a technology we do not use. We also think that we shouldn't be using. So this is as I said, the urban AI projects is the focus of what I will talk about today. So first I will go into customer service requests, what we're doing there, then going to the object detection kit where we're using computer vision to try to clean the streets, and then into crowd counting. And finally, one of the very promising new types of data, I think also for urban AI coming up, 3D point clouds, where we've been doing some research in how can we do that on a large scale and actually turn that information into something useful. So when maintaining one of the core tasks we have to do as a city is actually maintain the public space of the city. Citizens have been very helpful with that, and in the past years they always reach out to us in order to get help with cleaning the city, maintaining the city, or whatever type of issue they encounter. But we receive more than 300,000 of these requests every year. Some days it's 1,500. And there's approximately 130 different things we can do with these requests, like where they can end up, how we can help people. So basically, a few years ago, we started using machine learning to route these requests. So instead of somebody having to choose in a drop-down menu from 13 different types of garbage, we actually would ask them to describe it and say, hey, there's garbage here next to the container. Can you please clean that? And we will use machine learning to actually route it to the correct category. That was a very nice implementation. So people can call or go to the website, describe their issue in the public space, and it will be with textual classification routed to the correct department. And right now it's implemented in Amsterdam for a few years, and also in different cities in the Netherlands. It's available open source, the whole system around it as well, not just the classification, which really increased the customer satisfaction overall. However, with these type of technology, I think it's very important to realize it's training from the old examples. So for example, something written in Dutch, so somebody says there's garbage next to the container. There's a subject that happens a lot. A lot of requests are about this subject, and Dutch language is 95% of the service requests we get. If somebody contacts us in English and it's about something that's already not happening that often, it's more likely it will be actually incorrectly classified. And the issue with that is that they probably, if you contact us in English, you'll be helped less quickly. There was, of course, already an issue before we were using machine learning, but it's sort of like this effect becomes stronger. And then like the other example, some people don't even know they can contact us, or they are maybe a bit clumsy with a keyboard and make spelling errors. And then this actually will likely end up, being helped even later. So when we're making these systems, we want to think about, this type of effects we're having by implementing them. So great, everything is going more efficient, but are we not just being more efficient for 80% of the population? So really want to think about the government services as a car. It works really well if you're not too tall, not too small, but if you're an outlier, you will hit your head against the roof of the car, or you won't be able to reach the pedals. So when applying this technology, we have to make sure it's not enhancing that effect. We have to make sure we have mitigating, actually have to make sure that we also combat these effects. For example, by having people human in the loops, by checking outliers that are coming in. So at the same time, while we were looking for these solutions, we were thinking, hey, the number of cameras worldwide, they're becoming very cheap. And there's also a lot of them. So on one side, I think that can be dangerous because there's so many sensors gathering information about cities, but it's also a lot of opportunities. So the approximations for next year is 44 billion cameras around the world. So, my cell phone has 6. I always tell people, probably everybody has a few of those already. And then you can think these numbers probably are adding up. So at the same time, computer vision has become much better. It has been also becoming easier to implement because there's more and more, basically open source repositories and machine learning frameworks available. So we're thinking, hey, can we combine that? So we want a new way of actually finding issues in the city, and at the same time, also doing that in a way that is more equally spread around the city. Because another issue with the service requests is that in some neighborhoods you get much more than in others, even though there might even be the worst situation in the neighborhood where there are less people contacting us because they don't know how or for whatever reasons. So then this was 2 years ago, we created a model, first version that's capable of detecting this garbage. And we actually used that to attach smartphones. So it was very cheap hardware because we wanted to we also have very expensive cameras that drive around, but of course those are expensive. And if you want to see the dynamic changes in the city, you need to be very frequent. So for this, we attached the smartphones to the cars, we got them driving around, and whenever there would be garbage, the idea is to notify and make one of these service requests automatically. So the interesting thing with that is that apart from being able to know, for example, is it bulky waste or whatever, you can see the material, you can see it's furniture or it's wood. So we could, instead of just driving around collecting things, you could say, okay, we're going to collect a specific material. We're going to have a car dispatch that's going to collect mattresses in the city and then actually recycle them. So you turn the garbage into a resource, which I think is a very nice option you get. And also, of course, do it much more efficient. So a nice thing for doing this project is that we now have a large collection of basically pictures of cities and a lot of pictures of issues in cities. So right now we have that all annotated, and we're working on making this publicly available to allow for more research into basically urban computer vision and into something that's very relevant for cities. So to be able to bring this to a new standard so that these systems work really well. So right now we have this fully annotated, and we're working on some, well, basically we hope to, in the beginning of next year, to actually publish all this data and make it available for research. So more information of this project, you can read the paper or watch our website where also this information that you can find. And of course, when driving around with cameras, a very important aspect is the privacy of citizens. As I said, we want people to be able to move around the city freely without being spied on or feeling spied on. So the first thing that happens right now is when the image comes into the server, people are blurred from the image, license plates are removed. We don't need that information for the task we're doing. So we make sure to remove it as soon as we can detect them. And the next step, the models we're training right now are actually quite small already. They can fit on simple devices. I think in a few years, every smartphone will be capable of doing like real-time inference on images. So what we hope to do is actually to be able to create these devices to detect, well, for example, if there's a garbage next to the street and what type of garbage, instead of having to send it to a central server. So I think really edge computing is something that can help with privacy, because then you won't be transmitting these images. So it's another example. So we yearly take like this panorama images of the city. We're constantly improving the blur on this. So removing people from these images. So we do get value from distributing those images. And at the same time, there's no danger to somebody's privacy for being able to detect it on this. And this is an example which I think is quite fascinating to think about. So an intern of us worked on creating a model, basically, instead of just blurring people away, replace them with synthetic people. So you could actually distribute data while there's people on them, but then not with the original people, with people that do not exist. Of course, that's also to spark the discussion about the influence that basically, for example, the deepfakes are going to have on society. So, and at the same time, creating the synthetic data to be able to research these topics. So I said also I will say something about crowd counting we've been doing in the city. We started with this crowd counting projects called Public Eye a few years ago, before COVID even, to monitor the tourism in the city, what places is busy, what places are not. But right now it's mostly being used, for example, to at a park, we have different cameras set up that are turning these images into counts. And so we can get a very good estimate of, for example, a Dam Square in the city or a park in the city, how busy it is at any given point. And we want to use that information like in real time. So we distribute it on the website druktebeeld.amsterdam.nl. We have, for example, at Marineterrein in Amsterdam, we have a screen set up where you can actually see like how busy is it in different parts of the city. So the idea is that the more we can get this information to our citizens or people enjoying Amsterdam, the better they will be able to distribute themselves over the city. So with the space we can have more people enjoy it at the same time. So that's like trying to be smart with, well, the crowdiness of the city. So this is another project, and data type I think is going to be very much changing how we monitor assets in the city, how we look at cities. So we have this enormous data set of point clouds of the city, which is basically captured with LiDAR technology. So you might know that from self-driving cars, for example, but we use it in a different way. For those who don't know, basically you could see it as a picture being taken, and instead of just capturing the colors for every pixel, you're also with a laser, basically, if you have to summarize it briefly, also get the location of this pixel. So you get like a 3D copy of the city. However, for the City of Amsterdam, I think this was 6 terabytes of data. So not everybody can process that. So we were thinking, what if we can use actually AI, for example, to process this information and get out relevant information that we need. So how that works is using all sorts of different data sources from the city. We're enhancing these point clouds. So we're removing the ground points of this data, which removed like 3 terabytes already, because 50% of such data is actually ground. And we can remove buildings because we know where buildings are. And then what's left behind is actually things we want to identify. So where are the light posts? Where are the trees? And apart from having very accurate locations for them, you can also get very accurately, for example, for the lighting posts, which ones are about to fall over. So Actually, one of our point cloud researchers did a query on a part of the city and calculated, I think, like the top 100 of light posts that are most likely are tipping over or need attention. So that's, of course, you can do so much things with this. Imagine you have like a copy of all your trees every year. So being able to see how they're growing, analyzing that, seeing which ones of them are sick or anything like that. So I think that's something that's going to be very promising for actually, well, being able to cheaply cover the whole city and getting new information about it. So as I said, all these projects are also on our website, amsterdamintelligence.com. That's what we're building. Actually, it's a place where we want to share about our projects, even if they're still small, and we want people to know about what we're doing. And because, of course, with such technology, which is quite new and never implemented in the cities on such a way, we want to get feedback on that. Like, what do people think about it? Do people feel okay with it? Are there things we forgot when we're implementing this? So that's why we really try to be as transparent as possible. So apart from the amsterdamintelligence.com, we also have the algorithm register. And the idea is that we eventually, for all the algorithms that are having an influence on people, their lives, we think as a government, we should be having information about that readily available. So the idea of an algorithm register that we have is that all the algorithms are in there, and that we describe why we're using them, how they're working, what type of data did we use to train them, how did we combat any bias in them. So that's how we think really transparency is key to building trust and also to learn together with other experts. So that was what I wanted to share today. So if anybody ever has any ideas, let's have a talk about them now. And please feel free to reach out to me at a later point in time if you have any ideas or input. And that was it. So
thank you. Thank you very much, Maarten, for this great and very insightful presentation on how you are using urban artificial intelligence. If you have questions, yes, Antoine, I guess you have your question as you are opening your camera.
Yeah, exactly. First, thank you, Maarten, for this presentation. It was super. Really interesting to see like the broad catalog of projects that you have. You mentioned a lot of time that you were taking into account bias, or you were careful not to go into too much into the privacy of Amsterdam citizen. I was wondering who is taking care of that, in a sense. Like, is it like every AI machine learning engineer have a kind of a role in playing in that, or do you have like one person in your team that is the ethical person, go-to person for this project? Or is it coming from the one of the city council? I was wondering who is taking care of that.
Yeah, so of course we have to follow the law. So we have the GDPR, for example. We have to be okay with that. At the same time, I also think that sometimes you have to go, even especially as a government, you have to go further than that. So we also have like ethical frameworks. For example, we have the TADA manifesto. It's like a list of things that we want to take into account when working with data, especially. And of course, well, you always need this data for AI. So we also have like different groups in the city that are, for example, responsible commission for privacy. That's actually where you have to go to if you have something that's like new, so they can give their opinion, and they actually can decide like, hey, we have to stop doing this. So we also have people within the city that have like an ethical background that we can of course always discuss with, like, hey, should we do this, should we not do this? Because for some projects I think it's very obvious that's something that we don't want. But I think we also have to be careful that even with the projects that seem very, very nice and only positive for society, we still have to be aware of like, hey, how can this be used in 5 years? What will be the effects of this in society? So with something like with the service request, you can see that seems like a nice way. Everybody will help them more, but you're also introducing a bias which might grow over the years, enhancing something that's already happening within the city, and that's like inequality between neighborhoods. And of course we don't want to increase that. So that's just, I think, something, there's not one specific person working on this, everybody is, but we also have like dedicated groups for this. And we're also working on actually setting up like expert panels that we like external people. So we don't want to always be judging our own products, but also have people with different views and have them give their opinion on it, and try to do that as publicly as possible, and actually take those concerns seriously. Yeah. So a bit all overplays the answer, but it's something we do a lot with. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, really interesting. Yeah, I think it's really important to. I mean, you already shown that you really transparent about what you're doing, but it's also like about making sure, like like you say, in the future, like if something happens, how can actually those models can be used.
Yeah, an example is like this. We had this quite simple solution with distance measuring. We actually make sure to have like a sunset clause. So we said, okay, we can only do this if there's like we copied it to the Dutch law at that moment that allowed the government to do a little bit more, basically in terms because of COVID, because of health. So the moment the whole COVID situation would be gone at that point, and it went away for some time, unfortunately not permanently, we could actually not use the same legal documents to do the same thing. So I think that's also something important when doing these projects, to make sure there's like this sunset clause embedded into it.
Okay, and you always have like a process to go through when you creating a new project or starting a new process. You have to go through some kind of ethical framework when starting a new project.
Yeah, well, when projects are still very small, we do, like, for example, if an intern starts working on something, of course you cannot open up for all the hundreds of projects you do. You cannot go with the full ethical checking of things. But I think for us, the big difference is the moment we start using it in the city in our processes, that's when we do. Then we make sure that everything is completely thought about and well documented. So at the same time, we still want to have like room for innovation, for new things to happen, because you have to find, like, I think you have to have like a good balance between those two. Because if you have no room to experiment, then yeah, you probably will end up not doing anything, because there's always risk. But the moment it really starts having an impact on citizens, or we're embedding it in our processes, then we make sure to come out with the full, everything we can to make sure it's proper. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. It was a well thorough.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
We have a question in the chat from Yanto, who is asking, so this project seem applicable to other big cities. What makes Amsterdam more ready than other cities? And I think that maybe another question related to this one is about, like all the resources and capacity that you have at the City of Amsterdam, Maarten. So you said at the beginning that you are working with 20 machine learning engineers, project managers at the City of Amsterdam, plus 25 master students. So how do you explain that you have so many capacity and that you are really investigating in depth this technology?
Yeah, I think in Amsterdam we just have the right ecosystem for doing so, and people agreed on we have to invest in this right now in order to not be too late. I'm not sure if we are the most AI ready city, and we also really want to collaborate with other cities, because if you think about, for example, Facebook hiring 10,000 people to do R&D within Europe for the metaverse, I read somewhere, not sure if it's true, but those are insane amounts. No city will be able to do that. However, probably if we combine all our resources in a way, it would be possible. So I think it would be much better, actually, because even all cities are so different, but some of the core things are the same, and some solutions will also work in different cities. So I think we really also want to collaborate with other cities to see how can we work together. So, for example, sharing the machine learning data, I think that's always, it can take a year to really get a well-balanced data set to create these models. So we really want to share that and make sure that other cities can use that to be able to move faster. And we hope other cities will do this as well, hopefully then in a bit different domain or in a way that's complementary. So we can actually work together like that. Yeah.
I guess you have a question.
Yes. Hello. First, thank you for the presentation, and yes, I'm working in a metropolitan government area of Lille in the north of France, also on AI topics. So very open also to work more with Amsterdam and share data, for example, in models and inspire each other. So thank you for the presentation. I had one question. I have several, but one mostly is how do you articulate those two universes, like between the I sense that there is a lot of work in the academia, in the research environment, and how do you articulate what's going on there with the priorities, political priorities, projects of the municipality, and with the teams also that are maybe further from all the data science topic? How do you articulate, explain, and implement then the project?
Yes.
Is it easy also? Like, do you have some maybe issues with that?
No, it's a very good question. I think I gave a presentation last week. It was called From Academia to the Streets of the City. Because a lot of what we do is trying to actually bring that all the knowledge and the research that's in the academic community, which is like actively sharing a lot of this, and is innovating so quickly. Like it's almost impossible to keep up with all the research and all the improvements going around. So having a team of people with an academic background within the city researching and being able to translate that into making more applicable applications right now, I think that's very important. And at the same time, for example, the interns we have, they have the same challenge because they have to do like academic research, and at the same time they want to be at the city. We want them to do something for our citizens. So I think this balance is I don't have like a clear answer, but it's very important, and it's always, I think, good to align them. So investing in, for example, explainability at the university, that's also something we can use in the city. So it's about combining the right use cases with the right research. But at the same time, the city is sometimes changing even faster than the research is going. So if you have to make a plan for 4 years when you're collaborating with a university, that can be tricky, because in 4 years, maybe COVID is gone and we have something else that's changing the world completely. So it's also a bit of flexibility and find something that's common between the two parties collaborating.
Yeah, I guess also in the culture, it helps to always have an intern from the academia or PhD researchers inside working for also the city, I guess.
Yeah, yes. So me personally, also doing the PhD, I think it really helps me translate both worlds, and I try to understand both as much as I can. Of course, I don't fully understand both worlds because they can be quite complicated. But actually combining like the wishes and the civil servants and how they work with what the academia and what their goals are. I think knowing that and just making sure they both get what they want. And I think it's possible in collaborating. Definitely is. Yeah. Thanks.
We have another question in the chat. Annie is asking, to what extent are you looking at AI to help address the climate crisis and the urban context as part of your work research?
Yeah. So in Amsterdam, we're working on the circular economy a lot. So I think, for example, almost every project that we do around, for example, the more efficiently collecting the waste, collecting the materials separately is something that can help with that. Of course, also we have projects, for example, where we're analyzing buildings and seeing, hey, what type of materials can be found here? Because most of the resources we're using in the city are actually from the building and the constructions we're doing. So I think in those areas, there's a lot of room for innovation. But also, basically, if you do our operations more efficiently, I think we have more than 1,000 garbage trucks driving around the city daily. Even if they're electric, if we can optimize their routes and make that more efficient, it will cost less energy. So I think there's a lot of possibilities on that side. Yeah.
I also had a question, Maarten, because during your presentation, you talked about synthetic data. So the fact that you are going to replace blurred people by synthetic ones. Could you explain what is the interest of synthetic data? How could it be useful in which context for you?
Yeah, it was quite a small project. But I think it's a good example of like what is synthetic data. So you're replacing somebody with basically making it anonymous, but still identifiable in the same way. I think definitely the synthetic data is more interesting in the terms of, for example, when you're researching models that are more on personal data, because that's really hard to work with, because there's always a lot of you have to be very hesitant with what you do. You can just implement something because it will influencing somebody's life. So if you allow your data scientists to be able to research on synthetic data, like to create their models and to learn, I think that's like a way where you can have them learn about the technology and not being at that point when it's not real yet, being limited by regulations, because that's something that will make the creation of these models and making them good will slow it down. Well, of course, because you're not using actual data, that is much safer to experiment like that, and there will be much more room for it. So I think that's actually the context where that type of technology can be very useful for cities. So yeah, that's the area. So you'll be able to play with the more sensitive topics, without the possibility of you making grave mistakes, because you can't play around when it's actual people's data. So you have to be very careful. But if you have to be very careful, you cannot learn, because you learn from mistakes. So you can make the mistakes on the synthetic data and learn how to not make mistakes when you're working with actual people. Yeah.
Thank you. We have another question. Matab is asking, how do you see AI can help city accommodate more active mobility, like walking and cycling in your research and projects?
Yeah, so we do a lot of things, of course, with monitoring mobility. And then one of the things we're setting up for next year is the Amsterdam for All project. You can find on the website as well. As I said, like I think like government services tend to work well for 80% of the population. And something like AI is probably going to make that stronger. So what we're doing in this project is actually we're looking at the mobility of people that are actually facing bottlenecks. So we really want to make the city more inclusive. So for example, with the point clouds, we want to measure the obstacles on the sidewalk. With historical bike counts we have of the city, we want to create a model that's actually, because in Amsterdam you have a lot of bikes, and actually the number one issue we always hear from people that are, for example, blind, is these bikes are blocking the sidewalk. So maybe in other cities it's more like the e-scooters and the shared mobility with the same issue. So being able to predict where this is, being able to actually then, for example, change the public environment so it accommodates the people, or being able to inform people like, hey, if you want to go to this restaurant at this time, it's very likely that in this area you won't be able to move around freely because there's going to be a lot of bikes. So make sure that well, you, for example, you know that, or that we as a city can make sure that we go there more often and make sure it is accessible for people. So I think there's a lot of possibilities there, and actually in understanding what's happening in the city and helping people so they can still move around freely. Yeah, that's.
I had another question, Maarten. If you have, I feel no, please go on. I feel I saw you're opening your camera.
Maybe yeah. One short thank you, Uber. I've seen that you have an AI register. Register. I was wondering, how does it work? Like when you start a new project, do you already think like how is it going to be published, or how do you work to know which kind of algorithms and projects you're gonna publish on this website?
Yeah, so the ultimate goal was that we want to have everything on there that's having effect on citizens. I think right now it's mostly the projects that we are creating newly and that are going into well, what we call production. So it's going to have influence on people. So we're actually seeing if we can make policy that every algorithm used by the government has to be on there. So for example, also from businesses that are well, using algorithms to, for example, evaluate certain things for us, that they also have to be transparent about that it's actually regulated like that. So does it answer a bit? Yeah. Okay.
Also, Maarten, during your presentation, you talked about using smartphone as sensors and also about edge computing. So I was wondering, like there is a huge amount of literature about people as sensors, crowdsourcing data with people, and as a new way, to engage the community and neighborhoods in how you are using AI in collecting data. Is it also something you are investigating, or maybe something that you are already working on?
Yeah. So of course, we for example, we would like to make it open, such a system, so everybody can. Also, we spoke to truck drivers that really care about the environment. They said, oh, if I could hook that up and actually report local governments wherever I drive, that would be great. So I think that would be, we may need to make that technology public. We're also looking into, of course, the service requests are already sort of like crowdsourcing information from the city. We also right now have an intern working on, hey, can't we not make that easier even, so that people can, for example, just take a picture and it will turn it into a description of what is happening, so the departments in the city know what to do. So definitely, the citizens are, of course, a great asset in getting information about what needs help in the city. But at the same time, there's also the other side. We don't, basically, we want to be more proactive, and we want to be able to do without. So we're very happy with their help, but maybe eventually we hope we don't need it anymore. But that's, of course, a goal that we won't be achieving in the next 10 years. Maybe we will. I would be very happy, but I don't think so. Yeah.
And the last question, maybe if we don't have other one, and it will be the last one. It's a more personal question, Maarten, this time. So do you have a project about urban AI that you really like, that you are working on, or that you already did, and really that is quite excited for you because you see a huge potential in this project for public good, your city, etc.?
Yeah, I think everything today I really like. I think that there's a huge potential. So it's tricky to still have to like mention like something else apart from that. Yeah, I think the Amsterdam for All projects I already mentioned like before. I really like that because we're focusing on using the technology in something that it's not often used for, to actually include more people within society. So that's something I'm really hyped about, that we're going to be working on. Yeah.
I had maybe one last question, if you have
Sure.
time. So you mentioned before that you hope that we could work, like cities could work together on those kind of topics. Are you currently working with other cities or science centers, especially in Europe, on those topics already?
Yeah, so for example, I would say we can do it much more, but like the object detection kit was a joint project between Utrecht, Rotterdam, and Amsterdam, and some smaller cities within the Netherlands. So I would say we want to work together with more cities. I think, as I said, it's ridiculous that we're all doing these things separately. But of course, it's always it's tricky because while you're organized differently, you have like sometimes you have shifting agendas on what you should be focusing on. So if anybody has any ideas at any time, feel free to contact me and see if we can make that work. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like
it should happen much more than it already does.
Yeah, it looks like there's room for more collaboration, because there's a lot
Definitely.
in a lot of places. Thank you.
Maybe just one point on this. I'm very open. Also, I'm working in metropolitan environment of Lille, and in France too. We're trying to develop that. So I think at the European level, it could be even more interesting. I know that, for example, a city like Nantes has published an open project that they do to predict the quantities of meal they have to prepare in schools for lunch for children, and already another city wants to try to replicate this project, and they want to push other cities to try to replicate, to share also their experiences. So I think a wave like this of open projects and sharing also bricks of technology, like how to label data, how to develop models. I think more open tools like this could be developed at the European level too. So yeah. I agree, it could be very much more useful to work like this.
Yeah, we should see like what the academic community in AI is doing, that they share a lot. I know even like the companies joining in with the research, they're sharing a lot of things. And that's making it advance really quickly. I think that's what's driving the whole innovation in AI, the speed that it's going. So let's copy that from them and see how we can then use that in like urban context as well.
Maybe a last question, Maarten, if it's okay for you, that came sure. With AFID 1. So you talk about partnership with academic between cities. And so I was wondering, are you collaborating with private sector, with corporates? And if yes, could you give us some name and explain what you are doing?
Yeah, of course, we have to be careful because there's regulations about when we work together with businesses, we have to give everybody a fair chance. We do collaborate with businesses as well. But I think sometimes a bottleneck there is we want to be very transparent. And if you have a business making a AI solution, that's also becoming your IP. And then we come in with, hey, everything you do, we want to be open and transparent. So that can sometimes be a bit of a clash when collaborating. We do, however, think for a lot of things that are already being used a lot in the city, we use businesses to do it because governments are not good at doing things at a large scale and cost effectively. That's what you need a business for. So I think at that point, we do like public procurements where people can apply. So I've actually just the website innovationpartner.nl. It's also in English. It's a Dutch name. But basically there you can find like opportunities to work with the city. We also have programs like Startup in Residence, where we have like challenges every year, like and people can apply. So that's not just AI, but of course every AI solution is also welcome. And as I said, we're also investing in the whole ecosystem in Amsterdam. So having startup incubators, for example, where also, well, new AI technology can be used for, well, for economic purposes or to help society. Yeah. I can skip specific names, sorry.
No problem. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Maarten, for this presentation, for answering all our questions. So this is already the end of our Fix Urban AI conversation. Our next Urban AI conversation will be next week. It will be about programmable infrastructures. And actually, we are going to talk about robot projects. So we will still be in Amsterdam. The speakers of this session will be Michael Batty, Stefan van Dijk from the AMS Institute, and Tom Benson from the MIT Sensible City Lab. You have the link to register in comments. And in the meantime, you can the replay of this conversation will be very soon available on our YouTube channel. Bye, and have a great week, everyone.
Thank you, and thank you, Maarten. Bye.
No problem.
you.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.